that works.
All right, it's recording.
Okay. Oh yeah, I see it's recording. Okay.
Oh yeah, I see that too. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Hey
Hello.
guys!
So I'm Heather Tash.
And I'm Kristine Bauer.
And we are going to be talking with Carrie Eckert from Avocado to Zen today to hear her healing story from mold illness, and then hear how she used neuroscience to heal. So we started these interviews, just to give a background, to just kind of inspire people that healing is possible, and there's so many different modalities of healing out there to give people an idea of just of the different options that they have. So we started with Kristine last month, and now Carrie's our second one. Yeah. So if Carrie, if you want to just start off and maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you do.
I am Carrie Eckert, and I have, like Heather said, a website, Avocado to Zen, and I live in Sarasota, Florida. And I am I was a graphic designer, and now I have moved into health and wellness coaching with an emphasis on mind-body work.
Nice. And you have some kiddos and a hubby.
I have two boys. I have a dog and a husband, a house full of boys. All are boys.
Ooh, testosterone.
What made you think of your name, Avocado?
Oh, that was my husband's epiphany. Sometimes he comes up with these helpful things. So it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago when I thought about getting into nutrition. So I thought about doing a master's in nutrition. And I started a blog and started talking about healthy food and healthy eating and wanted to come up with a name. And so I asked him if he could help me think of something creative. And he had one of those, like I said, shower epiphanies, and several days later, and said, how about from A to Z? And I think he might have even said like from almond to zucchini or something. And then we brainstormed a little bit more, and Avocado to Zen seemed to sound a little bit better. At the time, I had no idea that I would actually go down the Zen path. It just sounded good. I was still all about food.
It was meant to
so it ended up having double meaning, because it's A to Z, Avocado to Zen, but also my journey went from food as healing, as my prime, healing method, to more of this mind-body work.
And that's what I thought it was. Yeah. It was because of that, from like being so obsessed with food as healing, and then moving, because that's how it starts. It always starts with their food, and then it just keeps trickling down and like to all these other woo realms.
Yeah.
Got to try all the other stuff first before you're willing to open up to
baby steps, for sure.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. That is super cool.
Yeah.
So you suffered from chronic inflammation. I'm having a brain fart. CIRS.
Chronic Inflammatory Response Syndrome. Although I didn't realize that was even a thing and that I could even have it until well into my sickness. It was probably 3 or 4 years in before that came up on my radar.
So let's maybe then go back those 3 or 4 years and talk about like what happened and how did you know you were sick? And then we always like to know, like, what was your life like before you were sick? Like, who were you? And then the illness came. What happened? How did you know?
I was probably just a typical type A mom. I had 2 kids. We had everything we needed, had a great husband. At the time, had a female dog, so there was a little bit more estrogen in the house. And I was doing great. I had my graphic design business. I was working from home. I was a self-starter, an entrepreneur, type A. So not only did I put a lot of my energy and effort into my business, but I put a lot of energy and effort into, presentation, is my home pretty, and do my kids have fun parties, and can I impress people with all that I do for these parties, and the what did you call them back then? It was the candy tables or something. I mean, you would just have a beautiful display of really crappy candy.
Teacher stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and then do all the I was designing stationery, so the invitations always had to be perfect. I was like, Brie Vandekamp. Felt like Brie Vandekamp. Did you guys ever watch that, or are you too young to have watched Desperate Housewives?
Yep.
And so everything was going really well, but I actually did notice that I felt empty. I mean, it's like I had all this great stuff and this great life, but something was missing. And I remember it was probably maybe 3 months before things crashed that I was just standing at the dining room table folding laundry, because what else do people do with the dining room table now and then anymore? They put their loads of laundry on it. And I'm standing there folding laundry and thinking, something's missing. Something has to change, even though on the exterior everything seemed so perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what that was. We thought about adoption. We thought about having another child. We, trying to fill that void. And then I guess around that time, both of my boys started having digestive problems. And my older one started having cyclical vomiting. So it was like clockwork. Every 10 days, he would have seizure-like vomiting.
Oh,
and the teachers were really worried about him. He was in first grade at the time. And he would just sit in a circle and fall over and just vomit. And we went to all the doctors. We went to every mainstream specialist we could go to, from head to toe, neurology to allergy to everything. And he got a clean bill of health. And so I talked to his pediatrician about maybe trying an elimination diet. And she thought it was silly, and she didn't back me on it at all. But she didn't mind if I did it. And so I had heard some things about gluten and dairy, and he loved bread. So I thought the easier battle would be dairy. So I eliminated, and since I am type A, it wasn't, we went in all the way, completely eliminated dairy down to the butter and everything. And I did it along with him, and instantly, the vomiting stopped. He started feeling better, started getting color back to his face, wasn't catching colds as much. That was, gosh, how many years ago? 7 years ago now or so. I think he's thrown up one time since then.
Wow.
It totally changed. And I did that along with him just to support him, and noticed immediately that my allergies, seasonal allergies and congestion that I'd had my whole life, just disappeared. So I noticed there was something to it as well. And then not long after, my younger son started having the same problem. So we eliminated dairy for him, saw the same results. And with all that, I got really excited about how food could be so instrumental in your health. And so I started researching, and the first diet I tried was a vegan diet, and felt really good on that. And, but that only lasted a couple months. And then all of a sudden, one day, it's just like I got a common cold or something, and just never recouped my energy.
Wow.
Yeah. So everybody in the house had gotten some little respiratory cold, and they all recovered. I had a couple days of fever, and then it just never seemed to go away. The fever went, and then the energy never came back.
Were you fatigued prior to that, or?
No, not really. I mean, in retrospect, I had started to have a little bit. It's all retrospect, but thinking back on it, the fatigue and maybe some GI symptoms would hit when I was eating gluten, because vegan, you can eat gluten.
Yeah.
So when I'd eat, Durham whole wheat, or add wheat germ to a smoothie, the healthy wheat, I'd find that I would get fatigued or end up in fetal position on the bathroom floor in the middle of the night, things like that. But I hadn't put two and two together. So
do you think when you got that cold, was that a sign that it was like, what do you think that meant, that the cold you had?
I don't know. I think it was just the breaking point. I mean, everybody else had the same respiratory virus that I had, and they all recovered.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it was probably my breaking point.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've heard that with other people, that there's just something that's finally too much, you know, and that's where you see the major change, the shift.
Mm-hmm. So what happened then after you got your cold? Is this when like things started to get worse?
Yeah. So then the energy never came back. I found that I was always struggling. I remember that was right before spring break that year, and we were going to have visitors come, and I had to cancel. My best friend from high school told her just not even to come. I wouldn't be a good host. And I was just struggling to get through the days. I mean, I was trying to be a good mom, tried to take them to museums on spring break. We didn't have any plans at this point. Things had been canceled. And I just remember being in a museum and having to just basically sit on a bench and ask my first grader to go watch my 4-year-old and take him around. I couldn't do it. I didn't have the energy. And this was weeks after that respiratory virus. And so that just, we didn't know what was going on. And so since diet had been so appealing and so helpful up to that point, I assumed that was going to be the path I needed to take. So I just started tweaking diet more and more and more.
Right.
You know, paleo to GAPS to FODMAPs to, you know, everything in between, and just kept going down those roads, hoping things would get better.
When did you notice then that it wasn't necessarily, because your diet ended up being perfect, and so when did you realize that it had to have been something more?
I mean, probably not for a good year. I mean, you know, if you're a perfectionist or type A, you're going to typically be hard on yourself and think, I still haven't done it right. You know, it's all my fault. I can get this right, and then I'll feel better.
Yeah.
So about a year later, I started working with a functional medicine doctor, and she brought in this, you know, some other avenues, the MTHFR testing and some supplements that I could take. And she brought up the ideas of Lyme and Epstein-Barr, but we didn't really test those. She was great because she didn't want to box me into a particular diagnosis. And even though I begged and pleaded to have a name for what I had, she wouldn't do it. And she just wanted to treat, you know, the underlying root cause of whatever that diagnosis would be. So
how come, I'm curious, because I never ever actually got a diagnosis either. I was just kind of left with, well, you just have this and this and this and this, you know? Like why did you want to have a diagnosis? Like what would it have done for you?
It would have been validation that I'm not making it up.
Right.
It's a huge one. It would have been proof to my family and friends that there's something there.
Yeah.
And then it would have been this extra little bit of hope that if you have a diagnosis, mainstream medicine has the treatment. You know, here's what you have, here's what you take, you get better.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. That's what I always wanted it for too.
Yeah.
The hope, I think, was the big one, because then if you know exactly what's wrong, then you can take the proper steps.
Right.
You know exactly what to do. Otherwise, you feel like you're going in circles. But yeah. So, did your symptoms get worse over this time?
I would say they did, yeah, because it went beyond fatigue into fibromyalgia pain. And that's a whole nother story. But around the same time that the fatigue started and I got that virus, I was also having some weird hip flexor pain, and ended up working with PT and MRI and all these Western routes, and struggled with that for 6 months or so. And then one day, that pain that had been so debilitating in my right hip that made it so that I couldn't sit on the floor and play with my kids. I couldn't ride a bike. I could barely get in and out of a car. One day, that pain disappeared and it shifted to my left hip.
Weird. Yeah, that is so weird.
I came out of a Pilates class. I was like, wait a second. It's on the opposite side. So that was the light bulb that this wasn't something that Western medicine has a name for in an MRI. You know, this is something different. And that's when I started to understand fibromyalgia and floating pain and stuff a little bit more.
Interesting.
So that was there. And then, gosh, it's so hard. It's like childbirth, which you guys, I guess, haven't done, but it's so painful and so horrible. And then when it's over, you forget. I mean, once you're all better, once you have that baby in your arms, you're like, I don't remember that.
Right.
So I don't remember all the symptoms, but it was typical of what most people talk about: the brain fog, anxiety, depression, chemical sensitivity.
Like, I always think that it's hard because when you're going through it, we wish we could go back to who we were before. Right? We don't realize that, okay, this is actually going to lead me to be a different person, probably a better person. So did you have like a grieving process? Were you able to let go of that old self? Or
I fought tooth and nail. I mean,
yeah.
There was no grieving. There was just fighting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be this. I'm that person.
Yeah.
I'm the person who gets it all done. I am Superwoman. I am self-sufficient. Where is that person? It was a constant fight. So yeah, that grieving process was not graceful.
No.
At all.
Were you positive for the MTHFR?
Yeah. Homozygous for A1298C.
Yep.
What about you guys?
I'm hetero for that one.
Me
I've
too.
never been tested, so maybe I should be tested.
Yeah. It's worth knowing.
What do you do for treatment?
Folate, methylfolate, and B12 are some of the main. There's just so many intricacies. There's so many doctors who have certain protocols. There's a lot involved. Some say, some of the practitioners I've worked with say don't even worry about it. 50% of the population has one or both. So
do you take something, either of you, for it?
I take a specific multivitamin that has a specific folate and the B vitamins, but other than that, no.
Yeah, the only thing anymore I do is I'm careful if I take a multivitamin that has methylfolate instead of folic acid.
Yeah.
That's really the only thing I do at this point.
I can show you the one that I have. That's okay, so you tried all these different modalities for healing, and then how did you come across the topic we're going to talk about of mind-body medicine?
Okay, so in the midst of all this, that was, I don't know, 2 years into it or so, we moved from North Florida down here to Sarasota. And within a few weeks of moving into our new old home, it's new to us, it's an old home, I began to guess that there was something off. I didn't actually, I knew that I shouldn't be around mold kind of intuitively, but I didn't have that sense of, I didn't know the smell yet, clearly. And so I wasn't picking up on that. But I slept in my son's room one night and woke up looking like Elephant Man. This like completely, yeah, I had an acute reaction, I guess. And then I realized that the 2 weeks that we had been there, my son had been congested the entire time. And so maybe it wasn't a cold. And so we just started investigating, and I could get into the details of the investigation, but it was a mess. Because we didn't even know where to begin, where to look, who to turn to, so it was not efficient whatsoever. But the end result was we did discover that there was a good bit of mold in multiple rooms, multiple floors of the house. And we went through a good 9 months of remediation. And because we didn't have the right people from the get-go directing us, we went through several rounds. We would do the remediation and then clean up, and then it would be great for a week or two, and then once all their cleaning stuff and their equipment had worn off, I would start to sense it again. And so we'd have to bring them back out. They'd hunt and look and find and then remediate. It was hard for our marriage because my husband didn't get it. He didn't sense it. And so to keep saying, no, it's still here. But, everybody else saying it's gone, we got it. And that was like 3 full times of us going back and forth, you know.
The professionals said it was gone?
The
professionals all said it was gone?
Yeah, they did, because we didn't know where to look. I mean, they thought they had thought they had found it because they found something and then cleaned up and they had checked all the margins and everything. But there were just so many different epicenters kind of that were not related to each other, but maybe had formed in different, it was really hodgepodge.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, now he knows to trust my nose.
Yes.
Now that I know what that smells like, it's not fine.
Yeah. Do they not have like little testers where it like senses where the mold is or not?
It's not that easy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's harder than that. I mean, at one point we had gotten the all clear and we thought we were done with everything. And we were really close to the end. We had taken 7 rooms down to the studs. So we thought we had seen everything. And I just said, you know what, since we're already down this far, why don't we just replace the doors? Because I'm worried they could have lead paint. We're already doing this anyway, and this is an older home. Let's just replace all the doors. It's not gonna be that much more expensive. Well, thank God I said that, because as they started taking the doors off and popping the frames, that was the worst mold we saw the whole time. And they had done air tests and tape tests right near there that had come back negative. But you have those door frames on there, and you can't detect through that.
That's so good to know, because I was just telling Ryan, I'm like, I feel like it's still here. Even though everything has come back negative except for the HVAC system in our bathroom, but I still have this gut feeling that it's not gone. So I'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
Trust your gut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So what are like typical, so you guys had sinus issues, you woke up looking like an elephant man.
You guys don't know what Elephant Man is. That was a movie, I think, back in the 60s or something. So it's something I use when my face looks all contorted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh
I don't know movies like at all. So
I know who you're talking about.
I don't know that I've actually seen it. Somehow that phrase is just stuck in my head from childhood.
Were you like physically sick? Like vomiting or anything like that?
No. So like my husband would have real acute reactions. Like when we popped the door frames, he would start wheezing and coughing and get runny nose. And my older son especially, would just get congestion and feel like he had a cold. Other than that night that I was in his room and woke up feeling that way, I didn't have that anymore because I stayed away for the most part. I would put like a mask on whenever they were doing different things. So I never had any more acute issues. Mine were just even more extreme fatigue than I already had, increased brain fog, confusion, anger, a lot of mental stuff. It just didn't feel like me. It was the biggest thing. So yeah, that's when I knew. And then with all that going on, that's when I started to investigate mold illness and see if it was a thing beyond acute reactions. And that's where online research led me to Shoemaker and survivingmold.com and then to various blogs. And I ended up finding a Shoemaker protocol doctor and ended up getting tested and finding out the diagnosis that I definitively had CIRS, Chronic Inflammatory Response Syndrome. And then, going from there, starting his protocol. The thing was, as wonderful as it was working with him and getting the diagnosis and having that validation, I also was told that I would never, for the rest of my life, be able to spend time in moldy buildings, which can be practically impossible. I mean, I've gone to various practitioners where I can sense the mold when I go in there. So banks or wherever, there's going to be places that have mold. And I was also told at that point, since I had chemical sensitivities, that I would have to be on medication for that for the rest of my life. And I didn't, food had been so healing for other things. I just couldn't fathom that there wasn't going to be some way to make me better without Western medicine like that. And without having to live in a bubble, and my bubble was already getting bigger or smaller. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to be free. I wanted to live life like everybody else. And so serendipitously, it happened that this woman that I'd heard about from my functional medicine doctor years ago happened to be bringing her program to an hour away from my home in Florida. She's a psychologist from Canada who rarely, if ever, comes to the East Coast. And within, days of getting this sentence from the Shoemaker Protocol doctor, I got an email that she was bringing her program down here. So
that's amazing.
Oh, and so wait, your functional medicine doctor you have been seeing years before mentioned her. Okay.
Yeah, and I had actually done this woman's online course years ago, but I just didn't stick with it.
Do you think, because I'm just thinking of my own story now and all the pieces that have been showing mold, do you think that this was a sign back then that you needed to investigate mold for the fatigue too?
No, because her program doesn't for mold illness. Her program, it probably is now, but at the time it was for chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, multiple chemical sensitivities, and electromagnetic sensitivities or something.
Okay.
That was really her focus.
Yeah. But is more geared than there's a sign that this is the area you needed to go for.
It was.
Yeah, got it.
That was definitely what it was.
Yeah. So crazy.
I love when things like that happen.
I know. It's like if only we had paid attention, and really absorbed that and moved forward with it, we probably,
who knows where we'd be.
Right. But then again, we wouldn't have the story in between that makes us, who we are and empathetic and
Well, and this mind-body work, this neuroplasticity work is so incredible, but until you've tried all the other things, most people just don't want to put in the effort to do it. There's so many other ways that you can get easier fixes.
It's hard work.
Yeah.
And if they're out there, why not explore all of those first? And then if they fail, then we'll do this, because this is hard work.
Yeah.
Seems
and
like
you don't necessarily see results right away either, where you can with food, right? Like food is a pretty immediate reaction.
I don't know. You can. I think you can, just maybe not in the alleviation of your symptoms, but in your ability to feel joy.
Yeah.
And to just overall feel better and more optimistic and more joyful. Yeah, you can see those quickly. And actually, in this 5-day program that I went to, there were people there who were, they were doing the dietary approaches as well. So they came to the program limited to 3 or 4 foods, because that's, how it is when you're starting to do these dietary protocols. It's like less and less and less you can tolerate. And by the end of those 5 days, they were eating whatever was on the buffet. So that's in 5 days they were seeing those changes.
That's
because their body was shifting to being in the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight, into being in the parasympathetic, in the rest and repair, rest and digest and repair. So you see how they could really tolerate these foods better. Everything was starting to function properly. The body was starting to heal, which it wants to do. Exactly. We just so often get in the way.
So what does it entail then? So like
tell us about it.
Yeah. Give us the juicy deets.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's hard to explain in a few sentences. It is a mindset, but it's not mind over matter. It's not just think I'm going to feel well and I'm going to feel well. It's much more than that. And I think that diminishes the degree to which we're sick. When people say, oh, you can just change your mindset and you'll be better. It's all, because then it makes it look like it's all in your mind. That's not what it is. We are having physiological manifestations of disease. It's just that the mind can help flip the switch so that the body can then start to heal. A lot of it has to do with, a key part of it is visualization. I'll say that the woman's program that I went to, she teaches a kind of a dialogue you have with yourself, and you practice it. She had you do like an hour a day, outside of symptoms or triggers. So you just set up time as if it were a meditation and make sure that you make that a part of your daily practice, and you go through this dialogue that you create during this program. And it's made to have your mind kind of speak to your body and get you out of, like I said, out of your fight or flight and into your more calm parasympathetic nervous system. But it's also more than that, because meditation can do that. It's actually calming the limbic brain. It's teaching the limbic brain, which is the part of the brain that's always on the search, on the lookout for dangers in the environment. It's teaching it that all is okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. You don't have to be hypervigilant anymore. You're no longer immersed in a moldy house, or you're no longer, whatever it is, whatever traumas you've had, you're no longer in those situations. You can calm down now. But you've got to actively teach your brain that.
Mm-hmm. Right, because these thoughts, in essence, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but like they're like habits almost. Like you wire your brain, to be like, to keep thinking these things over and over and over, and it becomes ingrained in you. So in a way, we're kind of retraining our brains and rewiring those neurons.
Yeah, because a lot of these become subconscious patterns. So you've got to get in there and break these subconscious patterns before they have their same cascade of events. So anyway, you practice the dialogue on its own. And then when you've practiced that and your body knows what you're trying to teach it, then you're better able to, in the real world, when you face symptoms and triggers in your daily life, go and use this dialogue and intercept it before these patterns turn into that same physiological cascade of events in the body.
Mm-hmm.
But you're actively managing this.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be very conscious and aware of your thoughts, and how they are creating symptoms, or the symptoms that follow the thoughts, in essence.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of work.
Takes a lot of work. It's a lot of awareness, but then the good part is the final step is to go into a visualization that is very pleasant, because your body and your brain doesn't know the difference between past, present, and future. So if you can immerse yourself in a visualization of a time in your past that was really joyous, and you can feel, use your five senses to immerse yourself in it, and then you can feel the emotion of it, and you can actually you can feel the physical sensations of being in that experience. Your brain thinks it's happening now. So what you're doing then is, if you go into that visualization, that feel-good experience creates a chemical concoction of events in your body that changes you physiologically, that sets your body into healing mode. And so if you add that to the last step of this dialogue that you're doing, what you're basically doing is taking a negative trigger. Like for me, I could walk down the street and smell the dryer exhaust from the neighbor's house and immediately start having symptoms and headache and brain fog, and then also have all these thoughts about, crap, this is so toxic, yada, yada. And then I go through my dialogue, my scripted dialogue, and then go into this visualization, and my brain is creating new neural pathways. It's taking something that was a negative event that would cause this negative cascade of events in my body and giving it a new outcome.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yep.
A healing outcome instead. So that's kind of the gist of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And it reminds me of how, like, Olympians, like Michael Phelps, he does all this visualization of him winning gold. And they, like him and this other skier, they both do this. And they literally say when they're visualizing them going down the slopes or swimming their laps, they can feel their muscles start to twitch, almost as if they're literally doing the workout. And they've done testing on these athletes who do this. And when they're done, their muscles are as contracted as if they were actually doing it.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think it's so fascinating.
It is. And that is time and time again, there have been more and more studies of that. Norman Doidge has a whole book on neuroplasticity and references all these different studies where people have used their mind versus somebody doing this practice in real life, and how the outcome is often very close, if not the same.
Right.
One thing I learned from my mentor, Martha Beck, I'm also a Martha Beck coach. She struggled with fibromyalgia, but she also had fatigue as well. And I know we talked before we started recording about how fatigue has been an overriding issue for all three of us. I did this for a while. This is one where you don't visualize necessarily a past experience or a joyous future experience, but you just lay there, you put a timer on for 10 minutes, and you visualize yourself being super active, doing everything active you can think of. You imagine climbing mountains or running marathons or swimming or whatever activities you like to do, and you stay in it for the whole 10 minutes. And that's something that, you know,
I'd be like working up a sweat. I feel like.
Yeah, but if you do that day in and day out for, try it for a week and see if your energy levels and the lulls of your day get better. I mean, maybe if you start to feel fatigued, if you need a nap, you need a nap. But if you don't need a nap, or as you're coming out of your nap or whatever, try that. Put on a timer for 10 minutes and then do that for a week and see if your energy levels are shifting.
Have you done
That's
it?
interesting.
Has it been helpful for you?
I did it back when I need to do it again. This is refreshing my memory. But yes, I did it when I was studying under her. I did it for a little while, but I didn't do that one consistently. And I think I wouldn't mind trying that one again.
Maybe since we all have that fatigue around the same time of day, we should all go do that.
Yeah.
We could all hold each other accountable. That's the big thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh. That would be really fun. I feel like I would start running. Like my legs, I feel like would just start going. Because if I imagine myself physically active, then I just all of a sudden just get pumped up and ready to go
do it. Yeah.
See? I mean, that shows you right there the power of the brain. I mean, you already know it.
Yep.
You know it. It's just hard to overcome. I mean, if you're overcome by pain or fatigue or brain fog, to think greater than your symptoms, that's very hard.
It is.
You just want to succumb to them.
You want to just lay down.
Well, it's funny you say this, because just the other day, someone was asking me, like, how do you keep fighting and going through this? And because if it was anybody else or me, I would have just given up. So how do you keep yourself going? And then this kind of leads into Joe Dispenza I was going to ask you about. But I have this vision, and I always have. It's the same vision. And when I do Joe Dispenza's meditations, this vision comes up too, of where I want my life to be and what how I'm feeling. And it's this most freeing sensation, and I can literally just picture that in my head, and I can feel it. I get goosebumps.
You have goosebumps.
Yeah, thinking about it, because it just that's where I want myself to be. And so I'm that is and that feeling that I can connect with instantly is what keeps me going. And it gets me, a lot of times it gets me out of that miserable place. Yeah.
That's cool.
And when Joe Dispenza is, you can tell more, but at the end of one of the hour-long meditations,
I did it for an hour.
Yeah, and I did it for a while, for a month straight, and then work got too crazy. That was when I was working in an office, so I would go sneak out and go do it in my car in the cold.
Oh my god!
To do this meditation during lunch hour, but whenever I'd be done, I would just be bawling my eyes out, because I really felt like I was in that place and I was healed. And then I would just come out and be after the tears stopped, I would just be so happy. It was.
That's cool.
Crazy.
That's strong. Yeah.
So with that said, you started looking into some of his stuff too and implementing that in your life.
Yeah, and he said at some of his workshops that the people who have, and I might misquote this, but he's had people who have had spontaneous healings. I mean, people in wheelchairs and things like that at his events. But he says it's once they get to a place that they are just so internally happy and joyous in spite of their symptoms, that the healing occurs.
Yeah. And what I like is with your program, the Free Your Mind program, I'll never forget because I've used done the happy day challenge when I was at my worst. Like I would go out and find something that made me happy because that would help me get out of the suffering. And then I would always have to watch something really funny at night in order to help me calm my mind and put me to sleep and whatnot. And then you do that with one of your modules, and I just love that. Laughter, was it module 1?
Yeah, I started with laughter as medicine. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think what I like about your program is that it focuses on creating these new healthy habits to get yourself out of the suffering, through laughter, or I can't remember all of this stuff that you have. There's a lot of good stuff and I can't remember it all. But
it's about developing new habits. It's a way of life. It's creating a new way of life. Mm-hmm. It's not a quick fix. It's not a pill that you're going to take and be good, but it's so worth it in the end. I mean, I live totally differently than I lived 6 or 7 years ago. Mm-hmm. Totally differently. Mm-hmm. And I fought it. Like I said, it wasn't graceful.
So when do you think you accepted or have you accepted?
I think I've accepted probably 90%. There's still a part of me that mourns the go, go, go Energizer Bunny.
Some days it's worse than others, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But no, the more I accept, the faster I see, changes. And I mean, the struggle is the struggle against who I really should be or could be drains energy. I mean, when you just let go of the struggle and just succumb to it and just say, okay, I'm tired. I'm going to rest.
That wasn't who you were supposed to be. And this is
right.
who you're supposed to be. And it just took you that journey to get to where you are today.
We were part of, I don't know if you guys know Mind Valley.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, he's great. I can't pronounce his name.
Yeah, I didn't his name, but I heard
Visham or something. Yeah. But I love how he
just goes on YouTube one day and he sees it.
Sorry. We look like you.
Right, whatever your name is. I like that he talks about the cultural rules, bullshit rules.
Oh.
Yeah. How we all feel like we need to be, doing the corporate job, having the nice house and the kids and the dog and and all the perfect Pinterest Martha Stewart perception. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's where we were, but our bodies knew that that's not where we were supposed to be following those rules. And so that's why we got sick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Be like, wake up. Hello.
Right. You're not one of those rule followers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make you happy either. You find that it's not happiness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so cool. So where are you at today?
In terms of health, I think that I pretty much don't have any symptoms. We were talking before that sometimes it must be cortisol levels. So, I will get tired, and it's funny now because all that resistance against taking a nap for so many years, now it's like if I'm not tired, I almost miss it. I'm not tired, and I really love that 3 o'clock nap, where is it? So that is one thing left, but maybe it will be here for the rest of my life. I mean, in Europe, they take siestas every day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and it's good people said that 2 p.m. and 2 a.m. are the times where the body is just naturally most tired. And so that's why people have these afternoon slumps.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Maybe there's something to that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of the Chinese organ clock?
No.
So if you get tired or if you have some kind of symptom at a specific time of day, you can normally correlate it with the Chinese organ clock because it says that at specific times of day, your organs work best at these times. So your colon is between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m.
Okay.
That's why most people go to the bathroom.
Right when they wake up?
When they wake up in the morning. 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. is the adrenal glands. So whenever I was, and sometimes still, if I notice my cortisol levels are out of whack, I will have a hard time falling asleep. And then I'm up past, I can't fall asleep between 9 and 11 when I'm having cortisol issues or adrenal issues. Yeah, because I'm all of a sudden my cortisol levels just spike through the roof. So let me see. So 3 o'clock is when you feel like you're most tired?
Well, it just varies. I would say probably 2 o'clock.
2? Okay, let's see if I can find a good one to follow here. Oh, I like this one. Okay, so 2, 1400 would be small intestine or ears, throat, or your heart, but I'm guessing small intestine.
I don't know. I mean, with all the woo-woo side I'm going to lately, it could be the heart.
Oh,
your heart chakra?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'll start focusing on that.
Mm-hmm.
Do some of that heart math stuff that we've talked about in the Free Your Mind group.
Yep.
Good meditation.
Also says small intestine. Solve your problems and get organized. Sort out any issues you might be dealing with. And the body is digesting lunch.
Well, it's always digesting lunch. It just is what it is. That happens to anybody.
Right, so. Exactly.
Yeah, so that's really all that's there, and I've learned to just make peace with it and, partner with it. And I'd say, but then spiritually, I'm probably 500 to 1,000% better. I mean, I'm on a much better journey now.
How different is your life now compared to what it was?
It is so slow. And that's okay. Like I said, it was a struggle, but now I enjoy it. I don't go to bed at night judging how many things I got off my to-do list to make me feel like I've accomplished. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's more, who did I interact with? What was the expression of my son's face when we talked about this? Or what did I get to do outside today? Or, that's how I judge my day instead.
I have another question. What was like the most challenging part of this whole journey?
Well, it was just, I would say, letting go of the reins, because I've always been self-sufficient. And fortunately, I was very lucky to have a family and some friends who tried to understand, but my family is who I'm with most, and they were extremely supportive, very helpful, always there. I mean, that was great. But I didn't really express gratitude for that because I was so angry at myself that I needed their help.
Yeah.
And so I think it was the struggle of not being able to be self-sufficient anymore.
Did you feel guilty at all as a mom? Like not being able to be there for your kids in the way that you were, or the ideal way that you wanted to be?
Yeah, I did for a very long time. And now what's really interesting is I feel like there's so much more wisdom I have now. So now that I've come through it, I can be a much greater mom than I ever could have been when I was the old Energizer Bunny. And I have the best talks with my just turned 11-year-old on the 30-minute drive to school in the mornings. It's like I look forward to what is it that's going to come up. And I feel like I have wisdom to share, and I can give him little nuggets and that he can take into his day. And that's something I would not have had before. I mean, before it would have been.
Do they see the difference in you?
I think they're little spiritual beings. I think they do.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'd admit it. They're both boys, so I'm sure my older one wouldn't. But
sensitive one, he probably, I'm sure, is right on there with you.
And they're sensitive in different ways. My older one is like my mini me, and yeah, he definitely picks up emotionally. But then my younger one's very empathic, but he likes to kind of not show that side. So anyway, I could get into them all day, but I think they're going to be my teachers in the long run. But right now I'll share whatever wisdom I have.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
What else do you have to share, if anything, about healing with your mind, or that you want other people to know?
Well, I guess the main thing is, the program that I learned when I found out that I had mold illness, that was that dialogue I talked about, and visualization is a wonderful, wonderful place to start. And it is what made such an impact in my healing. The one thing it didn't do was it didn't get into the emotional root of so much of our dis-ease and our illness. And so that's something that I've kind of taken that and taken it further. And now I work with my clients when they're ready on the repressed emotions and how to express those emotions. That's something that for a lot of clients, that's something they can't do at first. They're in fight or flight, they're very sick. And if you start getting into the emotional stuff, some of them have come to me saying that they have been doing emotional work and their autoimmune condition has come back in full force. I mean, it's too much, too fast. Yeah. And they think that's the route they're supposed to take. But no, I think it's very important to get the limbic system calmed down first and not necessarily dive into the emotional stuff. And then once that's under control, I think the next layer of the onion is to get into the emotional piece of the puzzle. And so that's a whole nother interview we could talk about, but that is something else that we do.
But that's a really good point, because you have the emotions that are from your past that you might be trapped, but then you also have now emotions from the illness that could be, it just keeps, those ones are strong emotions.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be another fun topic.
Yeah. I love all the emotional stuff.
What programs do you offer?
I just have my one program, and it's the
amazing, not just.
I've kind of reworked it. I was doing several things. I would do just one-on-one coaching and then also do the program, and now I've just combined it all. So it's the 6-week course that I developed, Free Your Mind, and it's a good introduction into the science of neuroplasticity, and clients then walk away with a process they can use, much like the dialogue I talk about that I learned from my course, but it's changed. It's my take on it. And so they have a process they can use daily, they practice with on their own, and then use when they're immersed in symptoms or triggers. There's also a group that goes along with it. So we've got a Facebook support group, and I do group calls every other week. And there's also a meditation library that I created. So it's meditations that I put together, and they're kind of sequential, and they have certain times you use them, all that. And then there's 2 coaching sessions with me that come along with it. So that's all part of one big package. And the goal is that, for most people, it would be enough to springboard them on to taking it from there, because my goal is not to have anybody tied to me. They've been tied to functional medicine doctors and supplements and drugs and acupuncturists or whatever, different protocols and things. I don't want to do that. I want to empower people to take their healing into their own hands. So the goal is it's one, but I'm happy to keep coaching people. Sorry.
The people that you tend to work with and are like us, who have been healing for a long time, diets are like perfect and whatnot. And then, we were saying that normally this is like the last resort or the last thing that we go to, because we need to get everything else figured out first. So you don't work with figuring out diets. You just really work on figuring out rewiring the brain. And I was halfway through a master's in nutrition, and then discovered this and switched over to the health and wellness coaching because it aligned more with the mind-body work. So that's what I prefer to do. Yeah.
I'm happy to answer questions if people have it about nutrition.
Perfect.
It's on everything, just like you guys have. There's a whole database in there of all that.
Yep.
But there are nutritionists for that. So
yes, exactly. And I feel like we need more people like you who work on this side of things, because there's so many nutritionists out there. But focusing on the mind-body work, it's not as prevalent. So
I hope to be the bridge for people who have maybe never been exposed to this mind-body stuff. They've been very conventional, even if it is functional medicine, but they've always been in that, Western side. I would like to be the bridge into this other kind of spiritual side as well. It doesn't have to be spiritual. I mean, I teach it from a scientific perspective. And then once people have these tools, they can make it their own. And I think a lot of clients then branch off into whatever fits for them. You know, they may decide they want to go learn more from Rick Hansen, who, you know, is a doctor. I think he's a psychiatrist, and maybe go his way. Or they may decide they want to go kind of more spiritual routes and learn from other teachers and do things on their own. But my goal is to be the bridge.
Yeah, and I think it is a really good bridge, because it does, like, module 2 is very sciencey, which is awesome. And so people who do it need to prepare themselves for module 2. But I think it's great. I don't think it's not too overwhelming. I think you do a really good job bringing it to a more basic level, because it is complicated, you know, and you want to be able to tell people and get them to understand what is going on. But then I also like that it is also, to me, I found there's like very more spiritual aspects to it. So I like that it was like there's a good combo.
Good. Oh, thank you.
I thought it was very well done. I think I still have a couple modules to do. Now that I'm done with the nutritional therapist thing, now I can start getting back to it.
Yeah, more time.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, everybody's on their own timeline, so I'm here to help, but everybody's got to be ready.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. I think it's great. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been really nice.
Very interesting.
Now, would you be open if people have questions about neuroscience or mold illness or whatnot to have them contact you?
Of course. Yeah, that's great. Oh, one thing I was going to offer is, and I can save this 48 hours for when you get this uploaded, so more people will see it. But once you have it uploaded and you've offered the replay, I will open up my 21 days of self-love course. It's not really a course. It's really just a daily little exercise. I'll open that up for free for like a 48-hour window for anybody who wants to enroll in that.
Wow.
It's usually $21, $1 a day, but I'll just do it for free.
Do they have like a code or something, do you think, to?
Not if I make it free for 48 hours, they won't have to worry about a code. Okay. It's just, it'll be free. So if anybody else finds it, whatever, but I'll just set it to free.
That sounds awesome.
So let me know when you're ready and I'll get that set up.
Yeah. Well, I'll send you a note right away.
Okay.
It might be a little bit, maybe in the weekend or something.
Okay. That's fine.
Once we figure out how to work technology, because it seems like we're like technology illiterate. We'll figure it out.
We'll get it. We'll get it.
We'll get it.
And then I would also like to mention that you have an awesome 3-part blog series coming up about mold.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention. Yeah, and I just timed it to come out now. So yesterday I put the first one out, but it's a 3-part series on my journey of mold illness. And I said it's from mold illness to mindfully healed. So the first part was the discovery of the mold and really understanding how insidious mold can be. And so that's already out on the blog. And then in a few days, I'll be putting the second part out, which talks more about how you can go about remediating in a more practical way than we did, and some helpful tools and references and resources. And then the third one is about healing your body. So.
Yeah, and the first one was awesome. Super good. Yeah. Good. Another resource too, you mentioned it earlier, but for those who are suffering with mold illness, is that survivingmold.com, right? And then there's another one, I think it's on the Bulletproof website with Avery guy. Oh my gosh, I'm probably
Asprey.
Dave
Asprey.
Yes. And he has that. I can't do names. I'm so bad at them.
You're close.
I'm close. I knew it was an A.
Yeah.
And it ended with an E, like Y. But anyways, his documentary on mold is fantastic.
That's how I found my doctor, was his mold documentary. Dr. McMahon was my doctor, and he's in that.
Oh, okay. Now I'm going to watch it again so I can pick him out. Yeah, that was super helpful, just seeing that. And then it also is validating, like knowing that you're not alone in feeling these symptoms and that other people also have them. So.
And it was free for a while. It might still be free. I know he was offering it for free.
It is still free.
Good. Good.
Yeah, hour long. Yep.
So is your house mold free now?
Seems to be. I don't have any intuitive sense that there's still any. Definitely don't smell anything. But we have some kind of fancy equipment in here. We went kind of overboard, but it's fine. It'll be, I'll describe it in more detail in the second blog post, so you'll see what it is that we have.
Woohoo. Leave us hanging.
Yeah.
All right. Well, do you
Yeah,
have
that was
anything
great.
else?
No.
Carrie, do you?
Nope, but the three of us are going to now do the 10-minute mind activity challenge, right?
Yes. Yep, starting tomorrow.
Starting tomorrow. Put a timer on for 10 minutes and visualize all the cardio activity you can.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna get my heart rate up so fast.
It's gonna be fun.
Hey, maybe I'll burn like 700 calories or something. I'll lose the weight I gained
Yeah, that would be great.
just by meditating.
We'll share stories on how hard it is to stay there and not have your mind drift onto something else.
Yeah.
It'll be hard for me.
Yeah, same here. 10 minutes is a long
That's
time.
a long time.
10 minutes is a long time. You can do it.
For an hour. That's a long
Well,
time.
His wasn't imagining physical activity for an hour now.
Oh.
No, they get you into really accessing your delta brain waves, and then so you're really calm and relaxed, and then you go into the last like 15, 20 minutes, I think it is, the one that I'm doing. He's got multiple meditations, but the last 15, 20 minutes is imagining like your future self, or figuring out which symptoms or feelings or beliefs you want to get rid of, and then you let them go, and then you imagine how you want your life to be, and like how will you live, what will you choose, where will you, all those things, and then you really get you into feeling it, and that's when I like break down every single time. Yeah. It's pretty powerful.
Cool. That's amazing.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Carrie.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for watching.
Yes, thanks all for attending.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Carrie. Take care.
You too.